Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome back to Casual Conversation with G&A. And today we have Flo from RAZA.STAND podcast. And I am going to put in the chat his channel if you guys are wanting to I can't subscribe, yes. But let me just say hi to some of the people. Big Cole, hi. How are you? And Vault of Nightmares, and Andy Warhols. Is that how you say it? Wig, you're my favorite. Okay, and then yeah, so far, that's who we have in the chat. But today we're going to be talking about the Mayan and the Aztec civilizations and their culture. Hi, Red. Hi, John. Welcome. Okay, so Flo is here. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. And if you guys have questions, just type them in the chat and we'll be more than happy to try to answer those. Hi.
Hello. So thank you again for this invitation. I know we had spoken previously of getting me on. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it worked out this week. I usually have
it's been a long
my
time
own,
coming.
Yeah. I usually have my own podcast on a Thursday or a Friday, but I'm trying to leave that space open for interviews with other folks who I don't, I know, but I mean, I'm trying to also be on their platform. So again, thank you for that. Look, I have watched your show, a couple of times, and you definitely talk about a lot of different things. So we're definitely going to get into who the Aztecs and the Maya were. But before that, again, my name is Flo. I go by Flo. It's long story short about the name. I got it when I was about 15. And it just stuck. And eventually I was actually in hip hop as well. So I used that name for hip hop. It worked out. And when I started doing the podcasting, I'm like, why use my regular name? I'm going to use my stage name, So
Yeah.
And it
So
seems
you used to rap?
I did.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
the name worked out, So
Yeah, and I know that what's the guy that was with you
Round
when you
96.
Yeah, so now he's doing like his own thing and he's got music going on too. So good for him.
Yeah.
I listened to some of his stuff.
Nice. Yeah. When we started doing the podcast, excuse me, I saw him like this, on on IG Live, and I just jumped on and started listening to him, and then eventually the idea came to eventually do my own thing, and now
Yeah, and you've had your Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been doing it for about a year now, so.
Oh, okay, that's what I was going to ask. How long have you been doing your podcast? Because I know that I jumped on a few of them and kind of shared my, my thoughts, my 2 cents, being nosy.
It's a good podcast. It's always had good topics.
Yes, and I remember I would like call Eileen and be like, "Come on, Eileen, call or join in."
Yeah, and I did one time, but I'm just like, I was just being camera shy.
Yeah, no camera.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, and that's what I do with my IG lives. I open up my lives to the community because a lot of the times, a lot of my topics are pretty controversial. I like to dive into controversial things because it's so easy to make assumptions and say, "Oh, this is what they think," or "This is how they feel, or what they believe in." And unless you have the conversation, then you don't really know what they actually think. For example, last week I had a one on feminism, right? How feminism is seen as this great thing for women, but I was doing some research that basically since the feminist movement, women have reported that they're actually unhappier compared to men since the 1970s. And that's not my opinion. That's actually, study.
Yeah.
So I posed a question, has feminism contributed to that unhappiness thing, right? And I had all women jump in that live, and a lot of them were actually saying that they understood like what I was saying. Because now women are taking more roles, more as opposed to before when they were just at home. They were essentially just doing the homework. Now they're working, taking care of kids.
Yeah.
It's a lot more work for women. So
there's a lot more work. Yes, I've tried it. I tried to work, and because I do homeschool, so I was trying to do both, and it was crazy hard. I was like, dude, I can't do this. you're going to have to take care of the home, and I'll stay home and watch the kids, and do the household stuff. But even that, it's really hard.
Work too.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I think I was more like relaxed when I worked than being at home all day. Like it's hard, but
even with a job, it feels like you go from one job to the next, like your job shift ends and then you jump into the next shift.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I mean, I feel like modern times, have made it more difficult.
I'm okay with being stay-at-home mom.
Yep.
And my husband taking care of everything else.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, it's a lot more difficult today, but
exactly.
I mean,
we're so blessed. Like my husband, like his job is able to, handle everything, handle the bills and stuff. But and I get to enjoy my kids and do things with them, and that's something that we had talked about prior us getting married. When we were dating, I told him this is my plan. And he's like, okay. He's like, that's your plan. You want to be there for the kids, and I'm all for it. So
that's great.
I was like, yeah, you're perfect.
That's great when you both align, because sometimes that doesn't always work.
No,
some people want to work, some people don't want to work.
Yeah, and I've told him I'm not afraid. Like if you have to be a stay-at-home dad, then go for it. I'll go to work. Like it's fine. Nice. But he's like, no, I'm okay. Like you handle that.
He's like, I'm not doing that, right?
Yeah, he's like, no, kids are hard. So, but definitely. It works. It definitely works.
Yep. So in regards to what we were going to talk about today, I know we can, go on any topic, but I know you brought me on to talk about Mesoamerican civilization, specifically the Mexica, what we call the Aztecs, and the Maya, right?
So I wanted to say about the Aztecs, I didn't know the specifics on them because I did some research and I was like, wow, like this is crazy. I did not know any of this. Because of course, like here in America, they don't teach us about the Mexican, not very much, the Mexican history. Yeah, it's very brief, just like basically like battles here and there. But I was very surprised about it. So,
what did you learn?
Well, I learned about the Mexica. I didn't know that they were Mexica before. I thought they were always Aztec. But that kind of like started to, basically it turned into that with them going, fighting for lands and things like that. So I was like, wow, this is crazy. They were pretty hardcore.
So the story goes that if you believe in their creation story, or not their creation story, but more so like where they came from, because Mesoamerica, and when I mean about Mesoamerica, it's what we now know as Middle America or Central Mexico and Central America. That is basically the area where a lot of civilizations came about, right? So before that, you got the Olmec, and I had an episode on that recently too about the Olmec people, the big giant heads you see in Mexico as well. The Aztecs were the last ones to come to the Valley of Mexico. They were basically the newcomers, So we are the most remembered civilization because they were the ones that the Spanish encountered.
So they were like the most recent,
Yes, right. But they were not the first ones. They were the latecomers, and when they came to the area, they were more nomadic, because the legend goes that their god or their leader Huitzilopochtli essentially said, when you see the eagle on the cactus, as you can see in the flag, right, that is where you're supposed to create your city. That's why the eagle on the flag, you see it in the Mexican flag, because that is a symbol of the Mexica people, right? But when they came, they arrived, they weren't welcome, right? They were not welcomed by the Toltec people. The Toltec were the people that were living there in the area at that time, and they had to earn their way, basically. Yeah. And when they did, they intermarried with another people there, because all of these people spoke the language of Nahuatl. They all spoke the same or similar language, so they understood each other, right? But the way they would gain power is through intermarriage. Just like in Europe, you had kings and queens that would marry other dukes or whatever, different areas. Same thing happened in Mesoamerica. So when the Mexica arrived and they became respected for their warfare, one of the chiefs from a different nation or tribe or whatever allowed them to marry one of the women. And what the Aztecs did is they married the woman, but then they skinned her, right? They had very, very brutal practiced it. And then when the other tribe came and saw that, they were like, what in the world is this, right? So they chased them out, and they ended up being chased into the lake where what is now Mexico City, and that's where they started to build all the different buildings and temples. It happened in the span of 200 years.
So the lake is no longer there, or it is?
It's there, but not like it was way bigger. If you look at maps, it was way bigger. If I'm correct, Lake Xochimilco was part of that, right? And if you go to Mexico City, you can still see that lake, but where the city is actually at, it's like a swamp, and that's why a lot of the buildings in Mexico are sinking, because they're built on a swamp.
Yeah, on marshy land.
Yep.
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that. So yeah, because I was trying to look in the map, try to locate. I was like, where is this lake? It's so cool, and I couldn't find it. I was like, what's going on? I was so confused. But
what the Spanish did is they drained the lake. Once the Spanish came and conquered it, they drained the lake so they can build, their churches and other buildings that they had. But prior to that, you had this huge lake, and it had canals. It had roads that went through the lake, so different, kind of like Venice, basically. You had the city that was there, but this didn't happen overnight. Obviously, it happened over 200 years, basically.
Yeah, and so. And when I was like doing the research, I was like, okay, so basically they were not wanted, right? So they would push them out.
Yes.
And they would gather themselves and start like progressing and becoming better. Basically. And eventually they started like taking over, like gaining, allies, and taking over lands, right? Yeah. And they took over the land of the man with the daughter situation. And I was like, dude, when I read that, I was like, this has got to be crazy. Like, this is not, it was just too much. But then again, with the human sacrifices, right?
Yes.
That happened with the Aztecs as well, right?
Yes. And the reason why we know about that, one, is because there has been mass graves that have been uncovered in Mexico City. So archaeologists have been able to prove that, right? And of course, in hindsight, if you look at it today, you'd be like, wow, this is terrible. But this wasn't something that was unique to the Aztecs. This is something that the entire world at one point did. Human sacrifice is actually very, very common all over the world. If you look at the Viking civilization, right, they did the same thing. They would get people that believed that if they got sacrificed, they were going to go to the afterlife and be honored or whatever. Even in Christianity, if you think about it, I mean, Jesus, is a lamb, right? Is the ultimate lamb of sacrifice. So human sacrifice is a very, for whatever reason, a lot of civilizations did do that, right? But obviously when the Spanish came and saw that, they were like, whoa, we don't do that anymore. Why are they doing it? They saw it as barbaric, but it happened. Not to the extent of what they said they did, because they obviously enlarged the numbers to be to justify the conquest, but they still practiced it. That's proven.
That's crazy. Yeah. I find that very like gruesome. I'm like, and the reason behind it too, because they was like a sacrifice for their gods, right?
Yes.
Which that's what they believe in, that the god needed blood sacrifices.
Until he sufficed,
basically. I guess. I mean, and the thing is that I thought, because basically the Aztecs would do human sacrifices, but they would sacrifice other tribes, right? Other which were like people that they were fighting with.
I mean, I'm just thinking about, the movie Apocalypto.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. For a long time I was like, oh, that's an Aztec movie, but then no, it's like it's a Mayan movie. Yeah. I was like, but I have a question. Let me see if you can see. Can you read the question?
Yes, it says, did they find any other evidence that the Mayan Aztecs originated in North America but migrated to South America and traded all the way to Florida? I was watching a documentary. Yes, all Native peoples traded with each other all over the Americas, right? They warred with each other. They traded with each other. They had, just like all over Europe, all over the world, that's how maize made its way into North America because maize is native to Mesoamerica. It's not native to North America, right? So yeah,
I didn't
they
know
would
that.
trade. They would trade with the neighboring nations, and then they would trade with other nations, and eventually made its way to what we now know as the United States. But all Native peoples traded. I mean, that is something that they did. That was very common, and whatever it wasn't accessible or whatever wasn't natural to their area, they would get it from another people.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The trade. And then, so basically the era of the Mayans, right? It ended with the Spanish coming to and taking over, right? What is it called? What is it?
The conquest.
The conquest. Yeah. So I mean, of course it took time, right? But
yes and no. Yes and no. The reason why is because one, the Mayans predate the Mexica. The Mayans,
yeah.
I think they're what's called the pre-classic period, or the period before the classic period, was around 300 years before Jesus, right? So that they were alive then. That's when they started to come about. And then I think around the year 900 was what they call the classic period. That's what, like, the height of their civilization. Mm-hmm. And then after that is the post-classic period, where a lot of the cities began to be abandoned, and that's where we get the myth or the belief that they disappeared, right? But mm-hmm. It didn't disappear. They didn't just go into the ether and just die out or whatever. The cities were abandoned, right, in the south.
Yeah.
And then they went up to the north, right? Places like Yucatan,
mm-hmm.
stuff like that. And then from there, they built more cities. And eventually, once again, the cities fell into decay. And then once the Spanish got there, all you had was little small villages all over that area that had a bunch of jungle. So the Spanish had a harder time conquering them because it was a bunch of little villages, as opposed to going to a huge city like the Mexica, mm-hmm. where they could just conquer mm-hmm. everybody, take them down. With the Mayans, it took them way longer to conquer.
Yeah, because the Mayans were like in the thousands, right? They were like, their civilization had like a lot of people compared to the Aztec civilization, right? And I always thought that they lived together, like they're in the same era, but they didn't, right? They're like
they did, but the height of the civilizations was not at the same time.
Ah, okay.
Yes,
that makes sense.
So when the Mexica, when the Mexica were at their height, the Maya were declining.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. Because they were older, like an older civilization too, right? They came before. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing that I was reading on was the sacrifices that the Mayans did. They basically sacrificed noble people and like higher ranked people because they felt like that would suffice their God more than an actual like person that was like, your average
commoner.
Yeah, commoner. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know that. I was like, dude, like they were serious about it, right?
Yep. And I think that the reason why that was the case is because, again, although all of these civilizations, were different, they shared a common culture in the sense of like this love for sacrificing individuals. Again, going back to what I said earlier, it was very common all over the world, but more so here in Mesoamerica. And the way we see death today is now how they saw it, right? Death to them was an honor. Death was a part of life. It was a cycle. So it wasn't like, oh, so-and-so. I mean, I'm sure they mourned, like everybody else as well, but it was almost like an honor, like I said, to mm-hmm. die like that. Mm-hmm. So they looked
so they volunteered. They're like, hey, take me, Exactly. That's crazy.
And even prisoners of war, right, who were captured and died, they saw it as an honor.
Wow. Yeah. It's crazy to think the difference from then to now, right? Because I think the last week we talked about the samurais, how they mm-hmm. themselves would like, what is it? A kapuru, where they would like commit suicide, like mm-hmm. as an honor of war, right? It was crazy. And I was like, wow, like they were for real. Like these people back then, I don't know. Okay. So like the Mayans, basically we talked about them a little bit, but Um, I the the big thing. Okay, the calendar.
Yes.
I always thought growing up that the calendar was an Aztec calendar.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, but after reading this, I was like, oh, this whole time I've been wrong. It's not an Aztec calendar, it's a Mayan calendar, which there's a big difference, right?
There is and there isn't. Again, going back to what I said earlier,
Uh-huh.
they shared common things, right? So
Yeah.
this calendar comes from the Maya, and some will even argue that it comes before that, right? And again, when people traded things, they also traded ideas. Kind of like today, you go to a different country and then you hear these different philosophies from different people, and then you kind of attribute that to your life. They did the same thing, except they modified it. For example, the numbers or the symbols, right? For numbers, you have the little dots, right, and the little lines. I don't know if you've seen that. And it's kind of ironic too, because you will see that in like gang members, right? The little three dots in there. That it comes from Mayan civilization, and that made its way into the Mexica eventually, right? That calendar you're talking about, they had their own, but the system was pretty very very similar, except the only difference was that the symbols were a little different for Mexica and for the Maya, but the calendar was actually a little more accurate than the one that the Europeans were using at the time.
That's crazy. I find that so fascinating, because how did they know?
Yeah.
Like
they studied the stars. I mean, that's what they did.
Yeah, they studied the stars, and the mathematical portion of it is crazy. And like sometimes I'm like, okay, they had to have help, man. There's probably like aliens that came down and like helped them, just with like the pyramids. Like, I mean, I feel that there's like so much conspiracy behind it as well. And there's a lot of like, I don't know. Like,
I mean, if we're discussing the pyramid, which I believe it's this one, right? The El Castillo, right?
Yes.
In Chichen Itza. I mean, it's beautiful, and it's in really good condition. And I know, how like they were very into like astronomy, and, the way they aligned it, like had something to do with the stars. And I mean, they really had their own culture, right? They had a sport, right?
Yes.
They had their own sport.
Like the little like the little soccer sport that they had?
Yeah, it's like soccer and basketball at the same time.
Yeah, but is it true? I mean, I've heard of this, but was it true that whoever lost would get killed?
If I'm correct, yes.
That's crazy.
And then also they would use like it wasn't really a ball, right?
It was a rubber ball.
Yeah, but it was really heavy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy, dude. Like, hey, you want to play this death game?
Yeah. So they had their own sports, and
the sport was a big thing for them. Like
my question was, what do you feel was the significance of the cenotes?
In regards to what?
In regards to the sacrifices, because I had heard that it was kind of like a dropping ground.
Oh, right, where they would drop the bodies?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was reading on that too, and I guess it was kind of because, okay, so they were saying that the civilization that the Mayans had, right?
Yes.
That it would suffer droughts, and they would also like try to work around that, but that's one of the reasons why they migrated, because of how everything was dying off. But I guess the cenotes, they would like collect water, as if I'm not mistaken, from the rain, and that's how they would survive, right? I mean, which is a logical sense, but I know that I've seen a documentary where they would go in there like and kind of explore, and they would find like skulls, and they would find like different things, which was one of the reasons why they thought that maybe like the Mayans all like, I don't know, like fell in there, or because, they said like how they said that they just disappeared. But I don't know. I think they're interesting. And they found like even pottery in there and things like that. So I don't know.
So was your question like, are you saying that if bodies were thrown in there, do you think that contributed to like the I guess the death in the civilization, in the sense that if you're throwing a dead body in there, I mean, it's gonna pollute the water, and contribute
That's
to.
the water they would drink. Or
Yeah.
unless maybe like they would throw bodies after the sacrifice or what?
Yeah.
Like in
Yeah, that
the
was
dry
my
ones?
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't
and I
know.
mean, unfortunately, they did not. I mean, they had obviously knowledge of some kind of diseases, but obviously nobody had any kind of knowledge about bacteria and everything else, how it traveled, through the body or whatever. So I'm sure that happened as well. It's very possible.
Yeah, and then that was, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of been so long too that people are kind of, they disappeared. But one of the other things that I was reading on about that was that when the Spanish arrived, they brought a lot of like famine and illness and things like that, and that was that I think, if I'm not mistaken, about like 90% of their population died because of that.
Yes. Yep.
Which is crazy, right? So we have the drought, we have wars going on, and we have like illness and all these diseases going around. So, and these are people that were not exposed like the Spanish were, right? So,
Yep.
I mean, even with like time and time again with Native American here in the United States, they would die from the same thing, these illnesses, foreign
Mhm.
illnesses that would come from the Spanish, basically, right?
Yeah.
The European side.
Yeah.
So,
As a matter of fact, I don't know if you ever read the book 1493. It's a book that talks about the different native civilizations all over the Americas. And one of the arguments that they make in that book is that smallpox had more of a contributing factor when it came to the death toll over any of the wars or violence that the Europeans committed on the native peoples. And what they said is that in some cases, like you know how they traded with each other, right? So
mhm.
they were also trading germs.
Yeah.
So in some cases, for example, when the English arrived in I think what is now Virginia, they found that the village was completely, isolated. I mean, it was gone. Like there was nobody there, and that's because the smallpox had reached that area from the Spanish, like you said, right,
That's
all the way
crazy.
over there. Because it's just like, I mean, we see it with COVID. I mean, what happened?
Yes. That's crazy. I was like, come on, it's in China. Like, let's
Yeah.
not freak out, people. And look,
Yep.
we got it, like so it's pretty crazy how fast it travels. And you
Yep.
think like, no, and I mean, and back then people didn't know about that stuff, right? And there was like kind of like a taboo. You're like, what's going on? What is this? Like, and I can see them thinking, oh, it's like something coming from God
Yes.
punishing them or things like that.
Yep.
But and then I also kind of was reading on when the Mayan kind of started fading, right? They would I guess join forces with the Spanish to conquer other like little cities around them, right? Because they were kind of, they had no option.
It was mainly the Mexica, because the
Oh,
Mexica
okay.
were used. They understood that they were warriors, so
Hmm.
they used the Mexica to conquer the rest of Mexico when they went into where my family is from, Michoacan.
Hmm.
Uh, their enemy, the Purepecha, were bitter enemies with the Mexica. They did not like them at all.
Wow.
So they couldn't conquer them. They were both pretty strong. So when the Mexica reached out to them and said, "Hey, we're getting attacked by these guys. Can we get help?" They're like, "No, you guys are on your own. You guys are basically on your own." And
Yeah.
when the Spanish came, the Purepecha just surrendered. Basically said, "Okay, we're not gonna fight you guys. You guys are welcome here." But the the Spanish continued to use the warriors from uh, Tenochtitlan, Mexico Tenochtitlan, which is now Mexico City, and just kept going upwards, into even up all the way up into New Mexico.
Really?
Yes.
This whole time I was thinking, man, they were just chilling like right there in like central Mexico, like they weren't moving anywhere, but that's crazy. I didn't know that. Oops, sorry, Lee.
Yep. And that's why if you look at a lot of Mexico, it has a lot of Nahuatl names. I don't know if you noticed that. A lot of names in Nahuatl, right? For example, Michoacan is a Nahuatl word, which means land of the fishermen, right?
Mm.
Tenochtitlan, obviously, but all those names in Mexico today that have the TL sound or TE sound, right? For example, Mazatlan means land of the deer, right?
Yeah.
All those areas, right, had a Nahuatl influence. So whenever they were bringing in the Mexica people, they were naming these areas because of them, right? Oh, like this is what it's gonna be called today, whatever, and these names survive to this day, which is crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. And I was reading about the Aztecs or the Mexica. I keep, it's just
Yeah, it's
stuck
fine.
that they're around like Guanajuato, Jalisco, Michoacan,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then and I thought that the Mayans were like mainly in Mexico, but I was mistaken because they're in the Yucatan, right? And
Yes.
Guatemala, Belize,
Central America.
Yeah, Honduras, El Salvador. So they were basically like more towards like the lower end, right? What did you call it? Central America.
Yes.
So that was interesting. I was like, okay, so basically like the top of Mexico was free, like they had no craziness going on, but they got to New Mexico.
Yeah. And then obviously the areas on top of Mexico Tenochtitlan were known as Chichimeca tribes, or
yes, and we were gonna talk about that because that's where my grandpa, he says we were.
Did you want to get into?
Yeah,
that?
we'll get into that, but let me see about this question. They have stories similar to Native Americans about star people at all. So yeah, because I think about like the drawings and sometimes where they like look up in the sky and there's like something that they're like, I guess praising or visitors.
Yeah.
Do you think that could have been the case too with Mayans or Aztecs or Mayans more?
You're asking if they basically were praying to aliens? Is that what you're saying?
Aliens, or if they saw them as like helpful beings or friends, or I don't know. Anything? I mean, is there any like that you've heard of?
There's a bunch of stories about that. I mean, if you watch the channel called, not the channel, the series called Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, there's a bunch of conspiracy theorists who believe that all of these civilizations that created all these great things, like we said, the Egyptians, here in Mesoamerica, all the pyramids, Stonehenge, whatever, that they were influenced by some kind of out of this world. Yeah, right. So, I mean, obviously, it seems like impossible because how you said how are they able to build all of these things in this time where we didn't have the same technology that we have today? So it's understandable why people think that. Now, as somebody who likes to believe in science and and evidence, I mean, yeah, it sounds like a good story and all, but there's just no evidence of that to me. So I mean, it could be, but
and there's like you haven't heard of any hieroglyphics of things like that?
No.
Yeah.
So what do you feel is the relevance of them having a strong belief in astronomy?
I think that was their explanation or their attempt to explain the cosmos. They obviously knew that there was something beyond the Earth, and maybe these gods that they believed in,
they prayed to,
were celestial, and they connect them to the stars. So that's my explanation for that. But as far as like actual aliens and stuff like that, I don't know if that's what they were praying to. I can't really attest to that and say,
like the predators coming through, and like helping them out.
I think it's a good story. It's a good story.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting. I think like to just go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, so we wanted to get into a little bit about like our ancestry, but I just wanted to say, as Mexicans, right? My family were what, second generation, first? I don't know how you establish generations.
Well, are your parents immigrants?
Yes.
You guys are first generation Americans.
Okay, so my family coming from Mexico, right? Yes. They're still hurt. They're still hurt by like the Spanish coming and conquering, and I mean, I feel like the stories were that they came and they conquered. Yeah, they brought a lot of stuff, but they also were not friendly or nice or kind per se. Yeah. And there was a lot of things happening especially to the women, right?
Yes.
And so I feel like my family, like even now, they're still hurt by that. Like they came, I don't want to be from Spain. I'm not happy being Spanish, you know? Like, and so, I mean, for us, it's like, dude, Spain is cool. Come on. Like, you know, like but like I said, we were born here, born and raised. I mean, we didn't go through this situation. As far as I know, my family, our great grandparents, I think we had from both sides. Our grandfathers from both sides were Spanish. Both of our great grandmothers were Mexican. Well, one of them was Chichimeca. The other one, do we know?
No, we don't know.
So basically, you know, that's how we kind of figured, okay, so we're like Spanish and like kind of Mexican. So we were kind of like, you know, so we of course did the ancestry, and Eileen wants to kind of share what came up, which is very interesting.
Yeah. You know, reasons why I did it. My grandpa, he would just always throw out theories. We're this, we're that. And I'm like, you know what? Let's find out. Like, let's really find out.
Yeah.
So I took it, and it says 41% Indigenous Americas from Mexico, and mostly from Michoacan and southern Jalisco. And that's true because you know my mom's from Jalisco, right?
Yeah, so basically it's because Jalisco's not Colima.
No, it's not.
So our parents were raised in Colima, Mexico.
Okay.
But she was born in Jalisco.
Yeah, she was born in Jalisco. But they were just raised in that area. They spent a couple time in Michoacan too. So so that was interesting, and I didn't really know about I didn't know anything at all about, you know, Native Mexicans. So my grandpa would always mention the Chichimecas, and when I looked into it, that's actually like kind of their area, right?
Yeah. It's a little bit north of what is now Mexico City, Zacatecas, that area.
Yeah. So, but I thought it was interesting. I was like, okay, so we're definitely Mexican.
Yeah.
Half.
Yeah.
What is it? 41%.
Mexican's a combination of both, right? Yeah. It's a combination of Native Mexican and Spanish. So so we're basically half. We're 41, Native Mexican, and the other 39 Spanish. A little bit of Scottish, Portuguese, a little bit of French, Colombian, Venezuelan, some states in Africa.
Like 2%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a little bit of like,
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Places. But it's definitely interesting. My grandpa still was in denial. He was like, no, we're from Texas. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean we're from Texas? And he's like, yeah, we're Texan, and what else would he say?
That we're French, and we're French. And I'm like, okay, let's find out. So I did a DNA test on him, and he's even more Spanish than.
Yeah, he's like 70% Spanish.
Wow.
So I was like,
so
I was like, Grandpa, you're like not even Mexican.
You're not that much native. So interesting.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way DNA and genetics work is really interesting too, because as just like you, I took a DNA test too around 10 years ago, because my mom would always say that we had African ancestry, to her side. And I was too young to really understand what she meant by that. So when I took it, it came up. Mine's pretty high. It's actually about almost 6%.
Really?
Yeah. And the group that I got the most was actually Spanish as well. I got about 56% Spanish. And my native one was about 35%.
So you're more Spanish than like Mexican.
Right? But phenotype, like my phenotype doesn't show that. My phenotype shows that I'm more indigenous or more African or whatever. But that's what I'm saying. Like phenotype and genotype don't always align, like your genes are not always shown through your skin color, right?
There's more dominance in some genes than others. Yeah,
yes, exactly. But as far as identities, because I know that you said, you're half Mexican or you're half Spanish, whatever, like the term Mexican is it's very fairly new term. It's only about 200 years old because that's not a term that people used back in the day, right? So when the Spanish came, they set up a whole system of complex names for people who were mixed. Because, like you said, off the bat, they began to intermarry with Native women, mostly. Some cases also Black women that they were bringing from Africa because they were also importing a lot of slaves into Mexico and all Latin America, really. But Mexico actually imported more slaves than the United States. And
really,
yes, the reason why that's not known is because, like you said, people in Mexico were more willing to intermarry or intermix than in the U.S. In the U.S., you also had that mixing as well, but the complex system was not as complex as it was in Mexico, or back in the day, it was called New Spain. You had like 16 categories for different ethnic or racial groups, right? So in your case, you say you were about 30, 40, and 40, right? So you would be considered mestizas because you're basically half. So mestiza would be a half Spanish, half Native American, right? And your grandpa, you say he was like 70% Spanish?
Yeah.
So they would consider him castizo because he's on the lighter side, right? So depending on your quantum, your blood quantum, they would move you up a category. So you would get bumped. The darker you were, the worse you had it. The lighter you were, is the better you had it. And that's why to this day, you see in Mexican families how we will say horrible things to each other based on our color.
Yeah.
And it goes back to then.
Yeah. And that's true because like my mom, she said she was always like the darker one. So they would always tell her, oh no, you're the, what did they call her? They called her the India.
Yeah.
So she was the India. And so, dude, she's not even dark. Like she her
really
color
isn't,
or my color.
Wow.
Yeah, like she's not. So
but I mean, and I was the darkest one out of my two sisters. Candy, the older one, she's always been like the lighter, really light skin. Eileen was probably next, and then it was me. So I was always, after that, my parents, okay, you're the India because you're the dark one. And I was like, okay, I can see how that's a generational thing, where if your sisters are lighter or your siblings are lighter, then you're the darkest one, you're the Indio, right? And I find that very interesting because I didn't know that. Like you get levels, man,
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And like I said, Mexican is an ethnicity. It's not a race. It's a nationality and an ethnicity. It's also a culture too, but it's not a race because racially, we're a combination of things. You just mentioned all the different people that, you're white, you're red, for Native, and you're also Black a little bit, 2%.
Yeah.
You're a combination of all those things, which is what makes Mexicans or Latin Americans. That's what we all come in different shades and colors,
Yeah.
And here in the States, like I said, it was way more simplistic. If somebody had any kind of admixture, right? And that's why you see this in the Black community too. You see light-skinned Black people. In our community, a light-skinned Black person would be considered, quote unquote, a mulatto, right? Or mulata. In the States, they're just Black because they were raised with the mom. And in Latin America, if a Spanish man happened to marry an African woman or a Native woman, they would be raised with the Spanish culture. And that's why a lot of us don't know our native languages, don't know our native traditions, right? We're mainly Spanish in the sense that we're, our religion is Spanish, our language is Spanish, the things we eat for the most part. Of course, there's some native things in there, that we eat, like frijoles and
corn
and stuff like that, right? So that So, but for the most part, cattle and pigs, and that wasn't native to the Americas. That was brought to the Americas over here, and that's why, for example, I don't know if you guys are lactose intolerant. That is also a native trait, because being able to tolerate milk is a European trait. Most people are not able to do that. So those who are have European in them, or a large portion of it. Yeah.
Grandpa should have given me more of that gene, because man,
Yep.
And even then, like I don't know if you heard of, what is it called, the raw milk, when you from the
Yes.
cow, like you go milk the cow and then you
Oh,
drink the
yeah,
raw
yeah,
milk. My
yeah.
dad does that. Like, and one time he took us, I was like, dude, okay, I'm gonna drink it. It was really good.
It
Like,
is.
Nice and warm.
it was warm. You put some hot. So I put some like
Oh,
quick
like,
Water.
yeah, they have
Nesquik
like,
in there,
uh-huh.
and I was happy go lucky. I was drinking it, and then all of a sudden, dude, like I want to say what, a few minutes,
couple minutes
my
later.
stomach was like in shock. Like, it was like, what did you do to me? And so then I was like, okay, this is something I can handle, but he can handle it. Like, he's been drinking it forever, and he's like, and you just put a little bit of tequila in there, we're good to go. That what does he say? It sanitize, or what is it?
I don't know.
It like cleans out the
Pasteurizing it.
bad, pasteurizes. Yeah, putting tequila in there, and I was like, it's just an excuse to get drunk. That's what it is. But it's definitely like, yeah, I can see that happening because, dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, your genes determine a lot of the things you can and cannot do.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
because you did the 23andMe, right?
Yes, I did.
So does that one give you more specifics on what, like your DNA, genealogy, things like that, like what you're prone to?
Pajarete,
It
that's
does,
what it
actually, it
is.
does. If you take because there's a health and ancestry one, I took both. So
Uh-huh.
it tells you, what some of the traits that you can have. For example, even like male baldness, it comes
Oh,
up.
really?
If you have it or not, it's like a check mark. If you can tolerate spicy food, if you can, if you're allergic to certain things, it comes up in your ancestry health test. That's why I took that one, because it had more things. The one you got, I don't know if you took ancestry.com, or I don't know what you took.
Yeah.
But that one's a little more generic. The other one's more
Yeah.
specific. It'll tell you, like, for example, with me too, it said family from Michoacan, right? And that's where my family's from, right? And it tells you like what countries, también as well. But like I said, what I really liked about it too was the health thing, because you can see some of the things you are prone to.
Yeah.
So you can.
And that's good to know, because you can
It
nip it
is
in the
good
bud
to know.
now.
Yes.
And that way it doesn't get worse, But then what if it's like a gene thing? Like, you're just going to get it no matter what,
Yeah, like
That's
for
scary.
me, it's high blood pressure. That's genetic. Yeah, my grandma has it. My dad has it. So I'm probably gonna get it. I'm already seeing some signs of that. I mean, and I'm not even a big person, But whenever I get like really stressed out, I start getting really, really dizzy. And one day I went to the doctor and like, damn, like your blood pressure's like through the roof. Like, how are you not getting a heart attack? I was like, I don't feel like I'm gonna get one.
But you exercise, right?
I
Like,
do,
you
yeah.
take care of yourself,
Yep.
and that's
It doesn't matter.
crazy.
It doesn't matter, So if I didn't take care of myself, it would be worse. A lot worse.
Yeah. Damn, that's crazy. See, that's scary right there. Okay, that's more scary than like other things. But and like,
but good information to know.
Yeah, it definitely, and especially for your kids,
Mhm.
because you have like if you do the 23andMe and you already have that, and then that's something your kids can be prone to, so you kind of protect them from it, or kind of guide them to eating healthier and having a healthier lifestyle.
Yep.
Which, like, even diet, like in Mexico, dude, come
Absolutely.
on, like, amazing food, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, we were always really big with seafood, and our family.
I mean, they're from the coast, our parents.
So and then, but they do suffer like from the cholesterol and the high blood pressure, and obvious, like, I'm like, okay, if they have it, like half of the family has it, So I'm thinking maybe we'll have it.
Just do your best to work out and not stress.
Yeah, like keep a stress-free life. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Genes, man.
Yep.
Yeah, genes are scary, guys. That's why I told Eileen, I was like, I'm like, now when you get married, right, you think about like relationships.
All this stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, you need to give them a full physical, be
like,
we're taking
hey, go get your DNA check.
Yes, like I want to see, because if we ever have kids, dude, like you better have a 100% healthy genetics, right?
Nobody is, though. Nobody's 100%.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, no one is.
You're superhuman,
Yeah, Superman or something, dude. Like, you're gonna have to find, and that's stuff you don't think about, like.
Yeah.
you just like my like Alan's side, my husband's side, they also have they're very prone to certain things. And I was like, dude, that's scary. Like, I have to take care of you. And like, I don't know. It just freaks me out. Like, it just freaks me out. I was like, I don't want you to get none of that. So, but it's crazy. It's crazy to think.
Yeah, like my wife's family, they all suffer from depression and anxiety. So
Really?
and it came out when she got pregnant with our daughter, and then she gave birth to her and had the postpartum. That all came out, all the depression and anxiety, and I was not equipped to deal with that because I had no idea how to deal with it. I never even knew what anxiety was.
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard of it, but I was like, what is this? Why doesn't she stop crying every 5 seconds? Like, what's going on? Like,
yeah. And I think that happened to me because my delivery was very traumatizing because I had twins, but it was very crazy. It was like, dude, like, I don't want to think about it. But I think I had some of the postpartum depression too.
Yeah, very common.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, no, this is not what it is. I'm fine. And you're like in denial, right?
Yep.
And then also like with the anxiety thing, I didn't develop that until now. Like, I'm, a grown woman with kids and I get anxiety. Why,
Yep.
And the doctors are like, you have anxiety. I was like, no, you guys are not. You're just lying to me. That's not what it is. Like, it's something else. But, like, I'm in denial. Like, I'm fine.
Well, at least, you have that mindset, because a lot of people don't have that mindset. They tell them they have anxiety and that's it. That's the world for them. They give them medication, and it sucks when somebody is not equipped to have that mindset and be like, you know what? I don't have this. Because my wife believed everything they told her, like, oh, I have this and now I'm gonna have it forever. It's so hard to lift somebody up when they're constantly putting themselves down.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. I mean, for as long as I remember, I've always had it. And, now that she tells me like, hey, I was feeling this way. And I'm like, I think you're just having an attack, And I don't know. I feel like it's helpful if she can recognize it.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you know that that's what's happening to you.
I mean, it's real, but I understand that, and I know this conversation is going to something totally different, but I just wanted to end it on this.
Hey, that's what we tend to do here. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't be alarmed.
We derail.
But I wanted to say that I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to basically say, I'm fine, but it's also not healthy just to completely ignore it, because it's eventually going to catch up to you. Now, how you cope with it is obviously a lot more positive and a lot more encouraging. That like you said, I don't have anything. I'm fine. You are basically saying, I'm good. Some people don't get to that mindset. Some people don't ever get there, and they need medication. So that's good. You're there. But of course, if you're having it, just acknowledge it and just move on from it.
Yeah. And of course, the medication's always like the thing, like, you got to get medicated or else. And I'm like, no, I'm good. But the thing is, like, with me, like, I think about it and I get it. And then I start saying, okay, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for no anxiety. I got to do things. I got to clean. I got to take care of the kids. Like, calm down, But sometimes it's just, it could be debilitating.
Yes.
And so this is one of the reasons why it's important to, like, for me personally, the thing that helps me that I've noticed is getting out, spending time with people that I enjoy, laughing, doing things. But it's, like, I don't know, like,
That's
I feel
what you
like
gotta
that's,
do.
yeah, exactly. Like, surround yourself with positive people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, what else, Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, I know we derailed, and this is another derailment.
That's fine.
For all my chatters, I think everybody in the chat already knows that, our show is like everything goes, right? But I wanted to ask, because I know you mentioned that you have had a UFO encounter. So can you share about that?
Yes. So I know that I had said earlier that I don't believe, there's no evidence of aliens, contacting native or any civilization. But when I was younger, and this could be me just being young, and like I said, I don't know if you got to listen to the episode I don't know where you heard this, but I mean, there's a whole episode on this, me describing the whole encounter or whatever. So when I was in elementary school, there was this one kid obsessed with UFOs and aliens. So he would always talk about them, right? Must have been like in second grade. I didn't even know what they were. I was too smart to really know what they were. But every day he would talk about them. And then there's one specific day, he's like, "Oh my goodness, there's an alien in the sky." I'm like, "What is he?" Or a UFO. I'm like, "What?" I looked up and I saw something in the sky, right? That was not a plane. So what I saw was definitely a UFO. Was it an alien ship? I don't know. But it was something I had never seen in my life. And as soon as I saw it, like this like fear just struck my body. I was immediately terrified. And I remember my mom being and waiting for me to go to class. This is outside of class. We're all lined up, gonna go inside class. It's early in the morning. So it's like everybody could see it, And the whole class is like, "Oh my God." Like it wasn't just me, it was a bunch of people seeing it. And then I'm telling my mom to look up in the sky. My mom's like, "Go inside class, go." And I'm like, "Mom, there's an alien or whatever, in the sky." And she didn't look. So she couldn't confirm that. But I remember after that moment, I began to believe in UFOs or just, different experiences that cannot be explained by science, right? I understand there's things you cannot explain. Just, science is, again, what I try to use to come to any conclusions, but there's things in life you can't use science for.
Yeah.
And in that specific moment, I remember seeing that. And then a year later, I saw something very similar, again, in the sky. And for a long time, I always felt like I was going to get abducted. I was like, you know what? I would see all these videos of people getting abducted and just horrible things. So I remember for the longest, I felt like every night there was somebody watching me, just waiting for me to move and just take me to wherever they were going to take me to this alien ship or whatever. But I felt like presence. Now, I didn't see anything, but I was so paralyzed, I couldn't move. Like, like when you're sleeping on one side and you want to move to the other side, you're so tired. I couldn't even do that. That's how bad it was, So maybe I had PTSD from seeing that UFO, whatever it was. For a long time, I could not sleep. And eventually, I just kind of forgot about it. And now I still believe that there is something out there. But as far as what it is, I don't know what it is.
Yeah. No. Did you ever had any dreams?
I had dreams
after your experience or after seeing it?
I had dreams about 10 years ago, not regarding aliens, but definitely something very weird. So I don't know if you heard of sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I for a long time, I would suffer through that. I would have sleep paralysis where I would wake up choking. I couldn't breathe. Right. Just it would happen to me a lot. But this specific time was really, really scary because I remember it almost felt like it was real. It didn't feel like a dream. It felt like I was out of my body. So what happened in this situation, I remember floating in the air, right? And I remember seeing my body on the bed. And I'm like, well, what just happened to me? Am I dead? Like, what's going on, And I'm just like floating in the air. I didn't go anywhere. I'm just there. And then I slowly come back down next to my body. I didn't go inside of it. I went next to it. And I just like lay down next to it. And the scary part is this. I look at my body and then my body looks at me. They open their eyes, right? And when that happened, that's when I went back into my body.
An out-of-body experience?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have never had anything like that happen, but I know that that's happened to like people that had like near-death experiences too, where they see their body float, where they float and they see their body. But that's a creepy one. And you remembered right away what was happening after you woke up?
As soon as I woke up, I was like, what was this? Like, what? Like, I couldn't even explain it.
Yeah.
Because I know that when you get, sleep paralysis, you're not able to move. Sometimes you wake up, you open up your eyes, but you can't move your hands, you can't move your legs. You're awake, but your body's not
right.
moving.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it was that it was such a trip that I can you know,
You were astral projecting or something.
Something happened, right?
On
But
the last projection.
I got another story regarding, because you mentioned near-death encounter. So I had one.
Really?
About 10 years ago. So, we were talking about food and genetics. So I have a inflammatory bowel disease. So basically my colon gets inflamed, when I'm really stressed out or if I eat certain foods. And it's a chronic disease, right, that I've had for almost 10 years. So when I was first diagnosed, I was in the hospital for about 11 days. Just basically didn't know what was going on. They did all kinds of tests, blood tests. They couldn't figure it out. But I remember on the third day, I was in this state of being asleep, but also being awake, kind of like what happened to me with the whole sleep paralysis thing, right? And I remember like hearing a voice that was not in the room asking me, do you know why we are born? And I was like, what? No, like, what do you mean? And they said, we're born to die. And I was like, oh my God, like that is the worst thing I could have heard right now at this moment.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, like, are you serious? Like, and then it asked me again. It said, okay, but why do we die? Again, I don't know. I mean, who's asking me these questions? I don't know what's going on. I said, I don't know. It said, we died to live. And it just gave me chills when I heard that. And it said, whatever you're going through right now at this moment, whatever you've experienced in the past, or anybody in your lineage, like, do not worry about it. Like, the greatness that awaits you, you have no idea.
That's awesome.
In the midst of me, like, basically, like, just being super sick.
Yeah.
And as I'm hearing this, I see this like light, this like cave, and I see Jesus guiding kids into that cave, right? Just like telling them to go inside, just go, like, just like very peaceful. So as I'm hearing the voice, I'm seeing Jesus, right? Or what people think Jesus looks like, right? This figure with long hair or whatever. And I was raised Catholic too, but I had a moment where I was an atheist for a long time. But by that time I was already more, back into my beliefs or whatever. But I honestly think it was either the ancestors talking to me or God. That's my only explanation, because I had never ever experienced anything like that in my life.
That's crazy. That's so cool. I'd be like, yes, at least I know that what awaits me,
All right. But to hear that,
exactly. And it's like,
wow.
And it's like this wise, like, perception of like what happens after death. And that's like a whole thing, like with, after death experience, and, like people that have come back time and time again see the same thing. Right. The tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, of course, for me, I'm a believer in God. I am Catholic. And I've had my own like spiritual experiences that are unexplained. And I know there's people like that have said, oh, maybe you just manifest it yourself. Maybe you just believe it so much that you think that's what happened. And I'm like, you know what? If it is, that's fine. I just want to believe it's God and let me be, I'm happy there. And so, but it's things that happen that there's no explanation for. Like one, I just want to like talk about this one really quick because I have a lot, but this one where I was like in deep meditation, and we went to a retreat. I was in very deep meditation. I was open. I was like, you know what? Whatever you want to do it. I'm not scared. I was like, I'm ready to go to the next level. And then I was praying like out loud. Then all of a sudden my language started changing.
Wow.
Right. And then I just felt like this heat come over me. And then my language I was praying, but I was praying in a different language I've never heard before. And so I've never learned that language before. So I was like, what is this? Like, what is happening? And so, they said that's speaking in tongues. And I was like, and for a long time, I thought, people that speak in tongues, that's scary. It's probably something evil, But when I had my experience, I thought it was, I couldn't explain it. There's definitely no explanation. The feeling that I got from it was beyond me, you know?
Yes.
And it was definitely like a spiritual encounter. I like to believe it was, because I didn't feel like no negativity, no evil, it was all light and love. And, I till this day, I still can do it. It still happens. And ever since that happened to me, it just doesn't, it's always been there, since that day. So I find that very, very interesting. And I'm like, dude, there's a God, okay? I don't care what you say. And so, and that's only one of I think that's been like the most major one that I've had, but there's definitely more encounters that I've had like that. So,
Yeah.
I choose to believe it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny that you mentioned how people will tell you, oh, you manifested in your head or
Yeah.
whatever. But even if that's the case, that just goes to show you the power of God, or, the power of the creator, that if you're able to manifest that stuff, because I mean, essentially that's what, to me, when I think about Jesus, I think about this human being who was able to, had so much faith in God that he was able to perform miracles and to do God's work, like you
Hmm.
say.
Yeah.
So I think as human beings, we could reach that level if we really have the faith. That's why they say, if you have the faith, you can move rock, mountains or whatever. A lot of us don't have that kind of faith or that kind of willingness to be able to do these things. And I think when it does happen to people like that, it just goes to show you the power, that
Yeah.
we do have.
Yeah. It's definitely like out of this world. I
Yep.
think it's crazy.
Yep.
The thing, and then even like the casting of like priests, right? Or like demonologists, people that have that power to drive evil out, right? Or they recognize, or they use the tools in this way where they're able to do things like that.
Yes.
And I find that like interesting and scary. I have a question for you.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and read it. What is the significance of the pyramid at Chichen Itza snake symbolism? It's a good question.
Oh, that's a good question. So actually, I was doing some reading on this yesterday, and the snake represents Kukulkan, which is one of their deities. The Mexica call them Quetzalcoatl. So it's the same deity, whatever. But going back to, we were speaking about geometry and the way these buildings were set, it was intentionally set to be able to have that shadow be casted on that temple platform. And it was supposed to represent, if I'm correct, them coming to the earth and just basically blessing the people, right? Because it's in Christianity, snakes and lizards or whatever are seen as evil, but in this culture they were revered. Snakes were seen as these powerful creatures, along with eagles as well. They that's why, again, the eagle in the back and the Mexica people, right? They saw them as being close to the heavens because they could fly, right?
Oh,
So
yeah, that makes
snakes, were also a very powerful symbolism for them. So that's what it means. That's what I know of.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember the symbolism of the eagle. I didn't even know that it was part of this. I
Yep.
thought it was like newer,
Yep.
like something newer, but it makes sense.
Yep.
And then just the fact that they said that it was, I guess, predicted by their God, right? Or there was a message sent to somebody when they see that symbolism,
Yes.
which is the eagle with the snake, that
Yeah.
was the place where they were gonna begin, right?
Yeah. The prophecy by Huitzilopochtli, their god or their leader. Basically, according to the prophecy, they said that when you see that symbol, that is where you build your city. Because they were a nomadic people that traveled for many years. They believe that they came from Aztlan, which is this mythical land of 7 caves. Some people will argue that this area is actually the Southwest, and that's why a lot of Chicanos say that this is actually our land, the Southwest, because this is where the Aztecs came from.
California.
Not just California, but really the whole Southwest, Arizona,
Uh-huh.
But I mean, again, there's no evidence of them coming from that area. I mean, there's obviously it's a good story too, but that they came from the north, they came from the north for sure, because they were not native to that specific region. Some people believe that they actually came from Nayarit, so they don't know exactly the exact location. But
Yeah.
what is interesting though is that in the Southwest, the languages is known as Uto-Aztecan is very related to Nahuatl. So there's obviously some connection to that area, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And like we said, native peoples, although they had different languages, a lot of them are really related. And if you believe in the theory of the Bering Strait theory, where they came from Asia, right? It
Mm-hmm.
is believed that only a few families are the entire ancestors of all the native peoples, right, of the Americas.
Yeah. That's crazy. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I wanted to ask was in regards to their beliefs, right?
Yes.
Um, so when it came to like now, like let's say nowadays, in Mexico, even here, right? People are still very superstitious. They still
Mhm.
believe in like things like signs. Like if you see something,
Yeah.
that's something's gonna happen, or you know even like the cleansing of oneself, like they go and try to get cleansings, or then they start to get into like the what is it, the chamal situation, right, where they go and try to find somebody to try war off these negative, I guess, what, like things that have been sent to them. What do you think, is that something that came from back then, or do you think that's more of a newer thing?
Are you saying that these beliefs that we have now, are you saying that they're tied to native peoples?
Yeah, if it's tied to like the Aztec, the or the even the Mayan culture, because you
Um,
see it all
yeah.
everywhere, right?
Well, I
In
mean, it could be tied to them, but let's remember that, even though these two civilizations are the most famous civilizations of this area, there were other native peoples all over Mexico, right? Like I said, I
Mhm,
mean, I'm from the Purepecha people. I mean, I don't know anything about them, culturally. I
mhm,
just know I come from them.
yeah,
But as far as these traditions that you were speaking about, they definitely come from native peoples, because the way they saw healing and the way they saw uh, connecting with the higher being is a little different than the way the Spanish saw it. And the way Catholicism spread, not just here in the Americas, but really all over the entire world where it touched, was through uh, combining other traditions and other customs of pagans, so they can convert to Christianity. For example, uh, Christmas, right? As the birth of Jesus, right? For a
yeah,
lot of people, but it's actually the winter solstice. That's a pagan holiday. It's a pagan tradition, right? So a lot of pagans were, you know, they use that to convert them to Christianity. Same thing with Easter, right? Easter falls on the spring equinox. Again, the dates of when this happened is very debated, but we do
yeah,
know that the sun, has it looks differently on those days, and the pagans, really had a connection to the stars and the sun.
mhm,
Oh, everywhere Christianity and Catholicism touch, they specifically Catholicism, because Catholicism basically means universal. They
yeah,
adopted these things, and that's why a lot of Protestants, they reject they reject Catholicism, because they say that it's not really Christianity. It's something that it's a combination of all these other different things, uh, that's not really tied to the original, um, beliefs of the church in the very beginning or whatever. But for sure, there's a lot of. I mean, even the Virgen, right? The Virgen de Guadalupe, right? If you look at her, she's clearly brown, right? I mean,
yeah,
she could have been brown
yeah,
in the in the Middle East, because I mean, at the end of the day, Jesus was a Jew, and so
yeah,
was she, right? But that story is nowhere in the Bible, obviously. The apparition of her, and but for a lot of Mexicans, La Virgen is very revered, right? People even pray
yes,
to her, directly to her, right? Uh, and that is supposedly, according to the legend, is she appeared to a Mexica man named Diego, or that's the name they gave him, right?
mhm,
Um, but she's supposed to be a representation of Tonantzin, right? Our honorable mother. That's what it means in Nahuatl.
mhm,
So they combine that with La Virgen, and And they made this new image of, and that's what being Mexican is all about, though. This mestizaje. I'm not just racially, but also culturally. The traditions that we carry are a mixture of not just indigenous, but also Spanish, and in some cases even African, or even in some cases, a lot of people don't know this too, especially on the coast of Mexico, you had Asians, more specifically Filipinos, because the Filipino people were also conquered by the Spanish.
Yeah. I know our brother-in-law is Filipino, and dude, like they have Spanish names.
Yep.
They have they can, some of them even speak Spanish. It's like super, super cool.
Yep.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah. And what do you think about like the cleansing and all that, like the brujeria and like the, all that happens? I mean, it's not only in Mexico. I'm sure it happens everywhere else, but I know it's like a big thing, like for us, like growing up. Oh, the owl, it's a witch, a shapeshifter,
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I personally never really grew up with any of those traditions because my dad's family is a little more European, and my mom's a little more indigenous and African. But even in her case, they were raised very Catholic because they grew up in haciendas. My great grandma, who's still alive, she's 100, and she was born there, and she never learned how to read. All they knew was going to church, and so all of those beliefs were shunned upon. If you believed in brujeria, it was like, no, like you're supposed to go pray to Jesus. You're supposed to go pray to God, la Virgen, not do a cleansing. So to me, I always thought as a I don't see it like this anymore, but as more of a pagan or a satanic ritual. And that's how a lot of Native people were also conquered, right? My wife believes in a lot of those things, right? For example, whenever she has like stomach pain, she'll get an egg and she'll like, crack it on her stomach. And if it boils, it means that it means that she's sick or whatever, right? She's got something, whatever. If it doesn't, then it means she's good. I'm like, well, the heat of it boiled it because it's so hot under your shirt, That's my explanation for it. But she's like, no, you just don't believe in it. Because my wife is more Native than I am. At least like, racially. She doesn't look Native. She's kind of like your skin tone, very light skin. But she took the DNA test too, and she's the opposite of me. She's like 50% Native and only like 20-something% Spanish. So she has a lot of more of those traditions that are Native. They believe in like brujeria. They believe in people being cursed. Matter of fact.
So is she Native from Mexico or Native American here?
No, from Mexico as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But her grandma one day, she got really upset with me because they were talking about, being cursed. And I don't believe in that. And she got super mad. And she's like, how dare you, one of my sons, died because somebody in the town put a curse on him. And I wasn't going to debate with her. I mean, my logic was he probably got sick because, you had terrible healthcare during that time.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to him. I wasn't going to say that to her, but I was okay. I guess with this, I understand where this is going. But again, I try to be logical about things.
Yeah.
So, but I'm not against those practices. I'm not going to say, don't do it. I don't tell her, hey, like that's satanic or don't do it. I'm just not going to do it myself because I don't believe that it helps me out.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I feel like with our family, some of our family like deathly believes in it. Like, there's like one of my aunts, she would like see an owl and be like, dude, that's a brujo. Or like, what do they call him?
Lechuza?
A lechuza, and things like that. But my parents are more like, like it's not a big deal, like they don't, I don't feel like they think. My mom sometimes does get superstitious, right? Like, but then I feel like she thinks about it and she's like, no, all right, yeah, you're right. I shouldn't think like that, or, but there's people that do think or believe that this is happening and that there's curses and hexes and, there's people that practice it,
Yep.
And so I feel like to some extent, there could be something, right? Some extent, I don't know, maybe I don't know. Like, it's just, it's hard. It's hard because, like, I've never really dived into it to say, okay, like, to me, everything's like, okay, it's possible. It's everything, anything could be possible.
Yeah. I mean, if it doesn't have an explanation, I mean,
Yeah.
There's a question here.
Okay.
How does Santeria fit into it all? Like, is it bad?
I think that goes back to what I was saying. I don't know too much about Santeria, but I know that it comes from the native beliefs and traditions, and if I'm correct, it involves like a lot of like bloodletting and stuff like that.
Yeah, and like animal sacrifice.
Yeah,
and
exactly right. Yeah. So
yeah,
definitely it does not come from the Spanish. It comes from the native people here. Is it bad? I'm not gonna say it's bad or good. I mean, I don't practice it,
yeah,
but if you believe it's a good thing, then as long as it's not hurting any, I mean, unless you're like an animal like rights activist, then probably not a good thing. But I personally don't have an issue with it. I don't practice it myself, but that's how I feel about that. Good question, though.
yeah. I know, like, I think I kind of agree. As long as it's not for like a bad purpose, like, it's kind of like don't harm other people or wish ill will on others. Like, I feel like that's kind of like, why? Why would you do that? That's sad. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah, and then like even random people, right? Like when my kids were little, I would always like people would tell me, oh, put bracelets on your kids because of the ojo, right? The what is it called? What do they call the eye? The eye something. It's like a little bracelet with a little eye on it.
Yeah.
And I would always say, no, I don't believe in that. I don't like it's my kids are fine. Like they have God on their side, they're good. And I remember one time we went to the store and we were walking out and a lady came up to me and she's like, "Oh, your kids are so cute. Which one is the one that has the eye?" And I was like, I didn't know this person, I was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "None of them. They're good." It started like getting in my head and I was like, "No, she's like, "Yeah, which one's the one that has the eye?" And I was like, "Why would she say that?" I got all like scared and I was like, "Okay, no." So what I did is I was like, "Okay, mom," because my mom was with me and I was like, "We're going straight to church and we're going to have them, the priest pray on them." And so and so I went to church and I told the priest, I was like, "People keep telling me that my kids have the eye and I don't know what to do about it." And he was just like, "No." He's like, don't believe in that. Like, it's not, they're fine. He's like, if, I'll pray for them if that makes you feel better, but your kids are okay, like, and I was like, okay, thank you. And then that made me feel better, like,
Yes.
so I just feel like things like that, like, I don't know what she meant by it. I don't know if she meant it like as a bad thing or, I mean, because it's usually related more towards like a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Like a bad, like omen thing. But I was like, no. And then I try to like tell myself they're fine, stop. The anxiety again,
And what I heard about that too is that supposedly if they have the eye thing, whatever, that you're supposed to touch babies or whatever,
Yeah.
as like, to get rid of it. Because one time I took my daughter to work and one of my coworkers told me that. He's like, like, can I touch her on the face? Because the whole
I
ojo
give
thing.
the eye.
I
Yeah.
was like, what are you talking about?
You're
If you
like,
just want to touch her, just like that's fine. You don't have to give me a reason why. But
yeah.
yeah.
But I had somebody, another person, because it wasn't the only time. There was
Okay.
another time where another woman told me, "Oh, can I give your kids a bendición?" Which is like, what is it? Like a blessing, because I give the eye. And I was like,
yeah,
I'm sure you don't. I told her, I'm sure you don't give nobody the eye. She's like, no, I do. I was like, no, I don't think you do. Like, you're good. And she's like, let me just do it just in case. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, she's just gonna like do like a little sign or something. No, but she like licked her finger and like did it on their forehead. And I was like,
gross.
dude, like I just sat there like, okay, like what do I do?
Being the germaphobe you are.
I've always been a germaphobe, and that's something that, like even before COVID, I would wear masks. I would have hand sanitizer. And people would look at me and be like, oh, she's crazy, right? Like the germaphobe.
Now the joke's on them, right?
Yeah, who's
Yeah, I was
laughing
like,
now?
dude, I had masks when the pandemic started, so
You're like,
sorry.
you're like, I already had them.
Yeah, I had a whole pack and everything. I was ready to go, but I don't know. I mean, they were fine. They're fine. They're good. Thank God they're healthy. And that's all I worry about. So, you know,
Yes.
yeah. But do you have any other questions, Eileen?
No, I don't think so.
Do you have any other questions for us?
Well, just wanted to say thanks for having me on. I know that, we've been on for an hour and almost 30 minutes,
I know, yeah.
And I appreciate you having me on the platform. And, we went everywhere. It was a really
Yeah,
good
we did.
conversation.
That's what we do here.
History,
But
that's why it's called casual conversations, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
like anything goes. That's our motto, right? But yeah, but we appreciate you for coming, and I know we've been trying to do this for a long time, and I think it turned out great. This conversation was awesome, and everybody in the chat, I'm glad everybody, people showed up, and you guys had
Yeah.
awesome questions,
Yes.
and thank you, everybody. So I think we're gonna end it, and if you guys have any other questions, put them in the comments and we'll try to see if we can answer those. But here's his podcast channel if you guys are wanting to go on there. And then I'm also going to leave it in the description.
Yes. And you could also find me on IG at RAZA.STAND, on TikTok at RAZA.STAND podcast, on Twitter. I'm everywhere, just trying to put myself out there.
Awesome.
But a lot of my videos are on YouTube. I talk about a lot of things too, different things. But I would like to get the both of you on eventually on my own thing, my own platform
Awesome.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Just let us know. We're open and available.
So hopefully, your sister's not shy this time. She can get on, and
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's always interesting topics on your channel. There always is.
Yeah, for sure.
Really good topics.
But I would like to just have an interview with you, just talking about your life and just your story, because that's what I do when I have my IG lives. I do them through IG now because I know that sometimes with the internet things could, things could crash or whatever. So with IG, I just, and also I get a lot more traction on Instagram, as you probably have seen. When I do Instagram lives, it gets up to like 20 people sometimes. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
I know. We haven't done lives in other channels, but I'm trying to get an Instagram going, so we'll see.
Yes, you do. You need to get an Instagram going. You need to have all these platforms going, all the social medias, just so you can get yourself out there, because what you guys have is really cool. And that's why when I promoted the show, I was like, well, I got to take a picture of your channel because I don't have your IG. I just use your personal IG.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
IG. So get yourself a channel and we can definitely, do it there. And
yeah. Well, I enjoyed it, and I hope you can stop by sometime again and we can talk about other topics. But
for sure.
Yeah, but we appreciate it, and thank you everybody for coming, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.